I'm Jane Hanson. This week in the arena, is it a fumble for Notre Dame? President Obama has accepted an invitation to be the commencement speaker at the Catholic University next month. But that decision has set off a firestorm of debate, with a growing number of Catholics, including some bishops, criticizing that move. That because the president's positions on abortion and embryonic stem cell research violate Catholic teaching. Here to discuss this, Elizabeth Scalia, contributor to Inside Catholic and author of the blog The Anchoress, Grant Gallicho, associate editor at Commonweal magazine, and on the telephone, Kathleen Donahue, a junior at Notre Dame and editor of the Irish Rover, a conservative paper on campus. Thank you all so much for being with us. Let's go first to Kathleen. I understand that you are part of a coalition of students that really is opposed to having invited the president to speak at commencement. What are your concerns, Kathleen?
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. As a coalition of students, we are concerned because honoring a pro-life politician directly violates the Catholic teaching of the Church. And as is the most commonly quoted thing in this whole debate is the 2004 statement by the Catholics in Political Life and the Catholic bishops that says we should not honor those who act in defiance of our fundamental moral principles. And our concern is that this is what we're doing. So as students, we are deeply opposed to it.
Well, I understand that, Kathleen, but I've read a study that said 97% of the senior class has supported this decision. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, that may very well be accurate. I haven't read any statistics about the number of students who support the decision. But really, it's not a matter of public opinion or student opinion about whether or not we should be supporting the president. It's really just a matter of whether or not his actions have violated the fundamental moral principles of the Church, and whether or not they have violated this, by extension, has violated our mission statement. And it has. So really, it wouldn't matter if 100% of seniors said, oh, great, we would really appreciate having Obama as a commencement speaker. Really, that's not the issue. It's not an issue of public opinion.
So what is it that you really want then? Do you want the invitation to be rescinded, or are you looking to raise issues? And where does this stand?
I mean, ultimately, it would be our goal to have the invitation rescinded, but clearly that's not a possibility. The university has already rejected that. I think our next issue that we would take up would be the fact that he's getting an honorary law degree, and we find it especially worrisome that our specific law school, whose mission is to facilitate greater understanding and commitment to the relationship between law and social justice, is honoring a president who has used the law to specifically, advance the opposition to the greatest Catholic social justice issue of our day, abortion. So we would hope that the university not honor him with a law degree. And if that's not possible, then our next goal would be for just a straight-up dialogue on this issue, because as I don't know if you are aware, but the Mendoza College of Business, the faculty in the Mendoza College of Business received an email from the news writer of the college giving them talking points about this subject and telling them specifically not to engage in debate about this issue. And
not to engage students in debate about the issue?
Yeah, not to engage if they are called from donors or other people outside the university or friends or anybody. It was just a recommendation that they do not engage in debate about the issue. You know, that's kind of contrary to what Father Jenkins has said.
Right. And as I understand the mission of a Catholic university, though, or a university in general, or any kind of an academic institution, isn't it, and I address this to you, Grant and Elizabeth as well, isn't it really about debate?
You know, I'll tell you, my first feeling when I heard about this was, this is a Catholic university. People are entitled to their opinions. We don't want an intellectual ghetto in our university, so let's bring on all comers. I'm a little surprised to hear this, the other side of it, which is don't engage in debate, don't say anything against the president coming. That's utter nonsense.
I'm just a little unclear on the source of this this directive, not to engage on debate. Kathleen, could you clarify that for me?
Yeah, it's the news writer of the Mendoza College of Business sent an email out to the entire faculty of the Mendoza College of Business with a list of bullet points saying, I'll read you a few of them. Do not engage in debate, agree or disagree, just let them talk. Do not offer any information that is not required. The number of complaints we've received.
Sure, but that's not meant to stifle debate within the business school. That's meant to, control the story outside of the Notre Dame community, correct?
I would say that just anybody calling in to the professors or discussing this, if they're recommended to specifically not engage in debate, I think that in general would stifle debate within the college as well. And further, our newspaper has contacted several members of the administration, I think 7 in total, to discuss about this, and we've gotten a very limited response. They all referred us to news and information about it and did not answer very many of our questions.
So it almost seems as if if communication on the subject is being cut off at this point in a certain respect. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that communication is being very tightly controlled by the administration, especially by news and information about the subject.
You know, the other thing that strikes me, though, is that President Bush spoke at a commencement ceremony at the time that the Iraq War was underway, and I know that is directly against what, the Pope at that point. So, I mean, there is kind of a precedent here.
Well, actually, President Bush was invited to speak in May of 2001, which is before 9/11 and before the Iraq War. And also, just as in response to those who would say that we shouldn't have invited Bush because of his stance on capital punishment or the war, perhaps they're right, but this is not, this fact doesn't support the decision to invite another president who you disagree with on fundamental moral principles.
Kathleen, I understand, this is Elizabeth, I understand your feelings about this, particularly President Obama has been in office for 70 days and very aggressively overturned the Mexico City legislation and then the embryonic stem cell. I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, don't you feel that the university was sort of damned if they did and damned if they didn't in this case? They've invited all of the other presidents. If they invited him, they were going to risk the wrath of the pro-life community. If they did not invite him, they were going to risk being called racist because he would have been the exception to a rule, and people would have wondered if his race had anything to do with it. Do you think that maybe the school had its hands tied and really could not have done other than they did?
I think that it's not a rule that Notre Dame has invited commencement speakers. We just started doing this, and it's been a tradition, but it's not a rule. And I think that in response to those who would say that we would be called racist, Father Hesburgh would be the biggest opponent of that, seeing as how he walked hand in hand with Martin Luther King Jr. So I think that the university just should have taken a stand and just fallen back on the Catholic teaching on this subject. So
Kathleen,
they may have received fire for it, but it would have been fire of the right kind.
Kathleen, I know there are a number of students or seniors who are torn over what to do, whether or not they're going to even attend the commencement ceremony, and obviously their families and parents are upset as well. How can you tell us how that's going on campus? What seniors are saying?
Yeah, well, we have a committee of seniors who are working to gauge the senior reaction to this. Several seniors have already decided they do not want to attend their graduation. Others have decided that they will maybe wear a pin to protest or something on their mortar boards or ideas that have been thrown out. Nothing's set in stone yet, though.
And I guess the bottom line is here, there are going to be protests, there are going to be other events that are going to go on, or at least you're going to have certain rallies. Just describe that quickly.
Yeah, actually this Sunday we're having a Palm Sunday prayer rally starting at 2 o'clock on campus, and we wish to invite the greater community to engage in a prayerful protest with us, just to respectfully display our displeasure with this invitation. So that's our first event. There'll be red letter signing, a keynote address, flowers, rosary praying by the grotto, that type of thing. So
it's a kind of a prayerful protest is what you're saying. Grant, you look like you've...
No, I just think... I'm not convinced by the view that we should recognize this invitation as directed at the president's abortion policies. I do think that that the Hesburgh legacy is one of affirming civil rights, and that the election of Barack Obama is the culmination of that effort.
All right. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much. If you have a final word about where you hope this all goes, please give it to us now, because we're going to take a break in a second. Any last thoughts?
Okay. Yeah, it's just our hope that we would like to pledge ourselves to acts of witness that will be characterized by respect, prayerfulness, and outspoken fidelity to the church. And really, we're truly concerned with the good of our university. We love Notre Dame. It's a great school, and there's an amazing Catholic identity here, and we just wish to demonstrate that to the rest of the world who's looking at us right now as kind of the failure of the Catholic Church because we invited President Obama. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Kathleen. Kathleen Donahue, who is a junior at Notre Dame and involved in the reaction against President Obama becoming the commencement speaker this May. We'll hear from someone who is supporting the president's visit to Notre Dame and have some other thoughts in just a moment, so stay with us. Welcome back as we continue our discussion about Notre Dame and President Obama. Joining us now by telephone is Father Thomas Reese, Senior Fellow at the Woodstock Theological Center at Georgetown University. Welcome, Father Reese. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's nice to be here.
So your take on all of this is that this is not a violation of Catholic teachings or the bishop's statement about Catholics and political life, correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, I see no problem with Notre Dame University having someone like President Obama come and speak on their campus. After all, I mean, just just in October of last year, the Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Egan, invited President Obama to speak at the Al Smith dinner.
Yeah, but he had both presidential candidates, and that's been kind of a tradition, and it's not giving them an honor or,
I would disagree. I mean, I think that the Al Smith dinner is a much more prestigious, I don't want to insult Notre Dame, but I think...
Well, you are, but go on.
I think that the Al Smith dinner is a much more prestigious platform than the University of Notre Dame. Are we saying that if we're having a fundraiser, we can invite somebody who's pro-choice, but if we can't invite them to a educational institution? I mean, this doesn't make any sense at all. It's been the tradition that the two presidential candidates are invited to the Al Smith dinner, but it's also been the tradition that the President of the United States has been invited to Notre Dame University. I don't see that there's any difference here. I mean, this document is either binding on bishops as well, or it's not binding on universities.
One of the disturbing things that this young woman we just had on from Notre Dame said to us was that there had been kind of not a mandate, but a suggestion that had come down that there should be limited debate by professors with outsiders from the college, or even with students who called or talked to them about trying to raise this as an issue of debate and trying to at least bring up the issues of concern about the president. Don't you find that disturbing as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think that universities should be places of debate. I mean, I think that they should have people like President Bush there, and they should debate the war. They should have Vice President Cheney there, and they should debate all of the issues that he was involved in. I have no problem with inviting people to college campuses in order to encourage discussion, debate, argument. That's what universities are supposed to be about.
So
I think to ban people from being on campus is an admission that your students are either very dumb or your arguments are not very convincing.
So the bottom line is that maybe this is a lot of ballyhoo about nothing, and that we really should be very open and encourage that that Catholics can have these kinds of discussions with people who disagree with some of the principles upon which Catholicism is based, or on the way we deal with modern society.
I think so. I mean, I remember in the early 60s that if Santa Clara University invited a Marxist to speak on campus, well, I mean, you'd think that the the university was endorsing the Soviet Union and communism. I mean, that's simply not what it means to invite someone to speak on campus.
Elizabeth?
It means that we want to have a discussion and debate.
I agree with that. I worry about Catholic institutions that I think Catholic University wouldn't allow John Kerry to speak a few years ago. And I worry about that only because I don't like the idea of an intellectual ghetto. I don't like the fact or the concept of any college narrowing its focus and saying we're only going to listen to one opinion. The President of the United States is as entitled to his opinion as anyone else. At least, I mean, this is still America. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And if you're secure in what you believe, you really shouldn't feel threatened by what someone else is saying.
The two of you are actually agreeing on something here.
We are. This is President Obama's first miracle. Father, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about what it means for the Bishops' Conference, for this handful of bishops to have piped up on this. I mean, it seems to be sort of a destabilizing event.
Well, we do have a problem in the United States today where about 15 or so bishops like to speak out on political issues. And this is, and the rest of the bishops want to run away from these issues and want to go hide, and in response to questions from reporters, they no comment. So what happens is when this small number of bishops speak out, they are seen to represent all of the bishops in the country, when in fact I don't think that's really the case. I think most of the bishops in the country wish Notre Dame hadn't invited Obama so they wouldn't have this problem. But, it's not because they want to suppress discussion and debate. Mm-hmm. It's because they don't want the controversy.
It doesn't say much about our bishops, does it?
Well, I don't know if you heard what Elizabeth just said, Father, but she said it doesn't say much about our bishops, does it?
Well, most bishops don't want to speak out about an issue that will divide the people in their diocese unless it is very clearly something that has to do with church teaching. They will speak out on abortion. They will speak out on issues that people disagree with, whether it's capital punishment or whatever it is. But, on this particular issue, it's not all that clear that it is crossing the line. In fact, probably most of them don't see a problem with having the President of the United States speak at Notre Dame.
Can I just say, though, that I think Archbishop DiNardo, or Cardinal DiNardo, and Archbishop Dolan and also Archbishop Chaput have spoken about it, and I think they are very much to the fore in terms of bishops who will speak out on issues. You say that, there's these 15 who keep doing it. Well, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that bishops speak out. And I thought all three of them spoke very well and made their argument well, and why shouldn't they make their argument? They have an ideal that they still need to articulate and uphold within the church. They, I think, have a duty to say, there may be a problem here, at least let's talk about it. I think that it's as important to hear them as it is to hear the president.
I agree with you. This is the prophetic role of bishops. They have a right to speak out, and in fact, they should speak out on those issues that they feel are important.
But what about the bishop at Notre Dame himself in Indiana who is not going to go to the commencement speech? Is that appropriate in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a bishop has to make up his own mind on this. But I have no problem with the bishop absenting himself to send a message to President Obama that he disagrees with him. What I would object to is if the bishop told Notre Dame, you have to disinvite him. You have to not allow him to be on campus. That is where he would, I'm all for freedom of speech for bishops. You can't be for freedom of speech for academics and for universities and then turn around and say that bishops can't have freedom of speech. I'm in favor of freedom of speech for both of them, for all sides. Where I would object is if the bishops made a move and tried to order Notre Dame to cancel the invitation.
Are you of a mind that bishops in this country need to spend more time in debate and in discussion and in dealing with some of the issues that maybe they're accused of putting their head in the sand about at times?
Well, I don't think the bishops are putting their heads in the sand. I wouldn't phrase it that way. But I think there's too much of a willingness of them to base their arguments on authority rather than on, reasons. People simply are no longer going to accept the bishops when they say, well, you have to do this because we say, or it's wrong because we say it's wrong. We have to have arguments that are convincing. And I think if the bishops got into more debate, they'd learn how to make more convincing argumentation.
Interesting thought. Well, that's got to be your final word. We thank you so much, Father Reese, for being with us. We truly appreciate it, and we're going to be back with some final thoughts on this whole issue with Grant and Elizabeth in just a moment. Welcome back to our discussion about President Obama's invitation to address the commencement class at Notre Dame. And of course, it's a big firestorm of debate. I want to say, by the way, that we have invited virtually every Catholic university that's in the metropolitan area to come and discuss this, and every single one of them decided not to partake of our invitation. I also want to mention, too, that you, Grant, were an unpaid advisor to the Obama campaign to talk about Catholicism and the campaign, and I just want to, in the efforts of full disclosure. Sure. This subject is bringing a lot of things to life here about the way that bishops speak out in this country. Did it bring some interesting information to you?
I was very taken with what Father Reese just said about our bishops needing to speak out more so that they can get into a habit, learn a habit of pastoral teaching as opposed to authoritative dictatedness. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think people are well beyond just listening to Rome or the bishops because they are Rome and the bishops. And I say that having a great deal of respect and love, really, for Pope Benedict and admiration for my bishops. I think that you can teach it in a pastoral way and people will listen, or you can come with the hammer and just break things apart.
You, Grant, when we were listening to Kathleen, the Irish Rover editor from Notre Dame, she talked about how it was really important to bring this debate and this subject up, and that why they were so opposed to. But in reality, what they've done by bringing it up is the very thing that the kids want, which is to engage in a debate about this. So it's interesting that don't you find there a real juxtaposition there?
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with her, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that sort of response, because I mean, she's very clear that they don't want to be seen to insult the office. They're not going to stand up and turn their backs. They're making their voice heard. But I do think that this whole dramatic episode has shown a darker side to the church, and I am concerned, just as a Catholic, that the way that the abortion subject is now dominating, that it's going to be very difficult, or it could be very, very tough for the Bishops' Conference to work in a healthy way with the Obama people in order to, get social justice legislation.
Because of the debate that this has brought up?
It's not. It's just that the tone, and I don't know, but I do wonder what the president makes of this. I mean, there aren't that. I can't remember the last time there was a bishop who said, something terribly positive about the guy, since Pope Benedict wrote him that letter after he was elected. Just that was pretty much it.
I really disagree with you. I don't think that this shows a darkness in the church at all. I think it shows this necessary debate is going to go on and go on forever because this is a subject people are passionate about. And I don't think it's the job of the bishops to go over to the president, slap him on the back and say, how do you do? You're great.
I didn't suggest that, Elizabeth.
No, I'm not saying you did. But I mean, I think the president has enough people saying to him in a day, how'd you get to be so great? And I think it's a good thing for bishops to...
My view is not that the bishop should, give the president a hug, coddle him, and tell him how wonderful he is. I'm just saying that there are other issues that the bishops are concerned with, that the church is concerned with. And you need to have a working relationship in order to get legislation passed.
That's true, but the president also needs to be able to signal that he is a little bit more amenable to the life issues than maybe he has done so far. I mean, his almost very first act as president was to rescind the Mexico City legislation, and I think the debate is still worth having about embryonic stem cells.
Sure.
The president hasn't really exactly been delicate on that issue either.
And these are debates that are going to continue. I just want to use one quote here. Both Notre Dame and the new president are fighting Irish when it comes to working for social justice, which I find to be terribly ironic and terribly interesting. Last words from both of you, because we only have a couple seconds. Grant?
Well, I would say that as frustrating as it can be for a Catholic journalist to see the abortion subject dominate, I do think that the way this has played out is actually, it's not as bad as it could have been.
And it's brought interesting debate.
This debate has been going on for 5,000 years since Moses said, I set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse, choose life. And G.K. Chesterton said, it is a fight between light and dark, and everyone must choose his side.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Grant. I really appreciate it. Thank you once again for joining us. A reminder, the net is always online, and you can watch this program and much more at www.netny.net. I'm Jane Hanson. I'll see you next time in the arena.